nutrition, lifestyle, and PED education. This is the Elite Strength Podcast with Aaron Scoffey.
Hey guys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Elite Strength Podcast. I know it's been a while, but I've been trying to get quality guests on this podcast. So I don't think I can get much more quality than the man that we have right here in AJ Morris. How are you, sir?
Very well. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you jumping on, my friend. Like we were sort of just talking about off camera, I guess, just wanting to talk about yourself, how you got into what it is that you do. Definitely having a chat about, I guess, the natural status when training down there with Kuba and the guys. I can imagine the temptation, I guess from my point of view, the temptation would be there, being an enhanced individual, that is. But yeah, man, how about you, yourself and things about you? Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. So I am 25 years old, almost 26. I've been involved in the fitness industry since about 2013, when I first sort of got into the traditional fitness instructor roles, coming out of a pretty long time that I spent as an athlete within motorsport. So I raced karts all across the UK and Europe. And the goal from a very early age was to sort of be in motorsport, involved as an athlete and race. And whether that was F1 or any form of motorsport, that's what I wanted to do from about 8 years old.
Yep.
And then sort of financially, the restriction there was pretty swiftly realized that I wasn't going to potentially progress to the level that I wanted. And I had this crossroads of, do I go down the academic route of, engineering or something like that and try and get involved in the sport in more of a background model? Or do I sort of, leave the motorsport side of things behind and try and find something else? So I ended up sort of leaving motorsport in about 2012. And by that point, I was already heavily involved in the fitness side of things. I was training really hard to be one of the fittest guys on circuit, have no limitations that I could control within my own capacity.
Yep.
So I was already sort of more heavily involved in the cardiovascular side of being in the gym, but I was in the gym most days when I wasn't racing. And I built a little bit of a passion and understanding for training with weights and building some muscle, and started to read some of the Flex magazines, muscular development, that kind of thing.
Yep.
I can remember the back end of racing, I'd be going to a weekend of racing, reading Flex or muscular development. And that's when I kind of I almost said to myself, I was only sort of 15 at the time, but I said to myself, that's not right. I want to be, whatever I do, I want to be completely passionate about it. And I was building more passion about how I could build muscle rather than, what I was going to do at a race weekend.
Yep.
So then, like I said, got involved in the fitness industry. I finished my education side of things at college. I'd had enough, if I'm honest, in terms of the standard education route. I didn't want to go to university, really. I didn't have any sort of deep passion to study further at that point. So I just got heavily involved in helping all kinds of people and sort of the personal training side of things. So I got my sort of, the documentation level 3, all of that kind of jazz that doesn't really teach you anything, but gives you a piece of paper
that says you can teach people.
Yes. That says you're perfectly fine to teach anyone. Which is a complete lie.
And then, exactly right.
And then luckily, I started coaching in a semi-private studio near London, in Brighton, where I grew up. And luckily enough, I was, and this is, I think, a big sort of pinpoint of my career, my trajectory, is that I was just part of such a phenomenal team, people that had immense knowledge across the board, people that would send me in the direction of, courses at the time, like Shredded by Science, Macronutrition Uni.
Yep.
Integra Education, I was part on all of those courses as a result of being in that semi-private unit. So I got probably the best start in the fitness industry that I could possibly get. So I'm always grateful for that. And I did 2 years there. Got quite busy, got to the point where I was like, up at 4, first client at 5, work until midday, train in a rushed fashion in between, go back in the evening. So I did all of that and I enjoyed it and I loved it, but it quickly became apparent to me that the scope for me to be a great bodybuilder and do that was pretty limited. Yes. And at the time they'd already coached me to handle these one-to-one clients that I was coaching at the time, to handle them as online clients. So they were already checking in with me outside of their sessions on an online basis. And I was, at that time, it was like 2015, 2014, the online coaching industry was a small fraction of what it is right now. Small fraction, exactly. There was limited online coaches out there. If you wanted to find someone that was a prep coach, you didn't really find them online. You must have found them in gyms, and then they'd locally help you and advise you. Yes. That was kind of the done thing back then, or at least to my awareness, that was more of the model that we were working with. But I believed at that time there was definitely scope in terms of developing sort of an online based model. And I started to help people locally primarily, but turning them into online clients. And I started a podcast at the time as well called Teen Muscle Radio, which was heavily directed at my niche at that point in time, which was helping teenagers and juniors come into the bodybuilding ranks and make progress. And I quickly developed quite a good, strong niche of clients within that sector, of course, charging like a low ticket price because young individuals, but quickly churning out great results, putting people on stage and doing what I loved, so by 2015, end of 2015, I left the studio and I went full time with Team MBM. And ever since then, I've just built that up to be basically what I always imagined it would be, which is coaching top level natural bodybuilders, turning people pro, taking people from, like whatever level they start at to potentially earning professional status, and then equally helping people that have always had a chink in their armor and might not have got the best out of their physique, and then bringing them on board of the team and trying to figure out ways and means that we can make them the best athlete they can be, and then putting that on stage eventually. So that's basically where I'm at now. Is I'm a full-time coach. It's pretty much what I do. I do on a very much a daily basis. I have, other things going on. Obviously, I am an athlete myself, and I always care a lot about my own processes. And I've been I've been lucky enough, but I've worked hard enough to win a couple of British titles, win a European title, win a world title. I'm proud of my own achievements, but equally I'm very sort of like passionate and on a daily basis, very motivated by the work of my clients. So when I take my own like off seasons, which this year and probably even next year will be years away from the stage for me, it's like I'm just very attached, I'd say emotionally to my client processes and just making sure that they do the best possible. That's really me. I'm sort of, very passionate about natural bodybuilding, and I hope that I can just keep building on what I've built so far over the course of the last sort of 7-8 years. Yeah,
I mean, you can definitely tell by the way you speak that you're very passionate about coaching as well as bodybuilding. Obviously, that those two together, it's sort of a no-brainer in terms of the work that you do currently, right? I guess my question to you would be, first and foremost, before actually we get into the question of why natural bodybuilding, I guess what's the appeal of natural bodybuilding to you? But before we even get into that, I think a lot of the listeners would, understand and know, let's say the IFBB, for example. Everyone sort of knows that federation, but we all know that that's not, I guess the natural federation, right? So I guess what are some of the, I guess, equivalents, or if there is an equivalent to the IFBB for natural? So it's like when you say you win a world title, I guess what federation is that? And I guess what's that in relation to IFBB, if we were to compare, if that makes sense?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a difficult one in all honesty. There's several natural bodybuilding federations out there, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because it would be great if there was just one. Yeah, it'd be great if there is just one, but there's always going to be people that want to do it better or want to do it different. And unfortunately, again, it's like it's becoming less so, I hope. And I think there's a lot of bridges that have actually been reformed over recent years and months. But there's a lot of bridges that have been burned within this sport. And, you know, when bridges get burned, you know, reputation, establishment that had been potentially like put through years of sporting, you know, not trust, you know, has been brought down by just a disagreement, you know, and a parting of ways, which is very frustrating. So, I mean, when I won my world title as a junior, I was with a federation called the WNBF, which is the World Natural Bodybuilding Federation.
Yep.
And I still believe that federation is one of the most established, the longest running, and arguably one of the most successful places that you win a world title.
Yes.
Most recently, I've competed with the INBA, PNBA, in which I've won a European title with. And you can see where this all just gets so confusing.
Of course. Yeah, no, of course.
Know,
and I know it's the same even in the enhanced world. It's the same. There's so many
like
federations.
NABA, PCA,
but we all know, I guess with the enhanced side, right? You know, Olympia, you're like, cool, that one. Yeah. So it's like,
exactly.
Which
actually should be the case in natural bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it doesn't help in some ways that when we have obviously like some good media exposure in natural bodybuilding sometimes. And this is what I'm working on massively with that one there.
I was going to touch into that. I saw that you were trying to.
So I'm working on that massively because I believe that some of the mainstream media that puts out natural bodybuilding content, like they're doing good things, but maybe it's in the wrong places because, you know, like in the moment, the INBA, PNBA gets great media exposure and some contracts through Generation Iron, but we know Generation Iron, like it's unfortunately the amount of followers that they've amassed. Yeah, it's people just don't understand.
Yes,
and they put up a post about natural bodybuilding, and literally 75 to 80% of the comment section is just people saying either it's not natty, or you don't do drug testing, and it's just all negative. You know.
Yes.
So like we need to build more positive exposure for the sport within the media. You know, realize that there is stringent drug testing going on at all levels. Realize that there is a wide plethora of incredible athletes across all federations.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I'd say, you know, just to break that down, give you an actual answer to that question, the best feds in the UK are the UKFBA, which is the UK Drug-Free Bodybuilding Association. It's been running for an extremely long period of time, with great success. They just came to their 10th anniversary and they've been taking people out to the States every single year, pretty much since they've been operating, fully funded to compete in any world final that they're affiliated with at the time. So they do a great job. The BNBF do a great job as well. Again, they've been taking athletes out to the DFAC world finals on a consistent basis. The DFAC is more of a growing federation. They seem to be getting less numbers at a world level than others, but it is still growing. And then you have the WNBF, which used to be affiliated with the UKFBA, but they parted ways last year. And now the WNBF have like the UK affiliate, which is the WNBF UK. And I haven't personally competed with them, so I can't really comment on sort of what
completely fair
what level of shows they bring. But from the looks of it, and from clients that competed with them, it looks like it. You know, they've done a decent job with what they've been able to put together there. So there's good, you know, there's great opportunity. And I think that the biggest thing is that, you know, for people that are looking to get into the sport, it's just such a high standard, you know, across the board. So, you know, if you want to compete naturally, there's great opportunities to do it in the UK and actually where you are as well. I'd say actually the UK and Australia are like the best in terms of natural bodybuilding. I'd say they're better than the States, if I'm honest. And I'll go on the line and say that. I'll probably get some US bodybuilders that hate me for saying that, but they are like, they churn out the best bodybuilders. You know, especially the conditioning in Australia, the guys that come into most shows within, I think it's like the ICN.
Yes. Yeah, that's the more popular one down here.
Yeah, the ICN, it's just like most of the guys that are out there, they all come in peeled. So it's a great sport and it's ever growing at the moment.
I was going to say, in terms of popularity, when you're going to shows? Like, is there many people doing natural shows?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
So obviously over like the COVID period,
Mhm.
definitely got impacted because of people not having access to gyms.
Of course, yes.
2020 was a pretty low level year in terms of entry numbers, but the quality was high because the people that did train are the people that are like the people who like care about what time they go to bed every night kind of people, you know, the people that will find a way.
Yeah.
You know, so the quality was still there, but the numbers weren't quite. But you know, we're looking at, you know, when you turn up at most qualifiers, especially at the like the latter end of the season, you'll be seeing, you know, 10, 15, 20 athletes on stage in most categories. So it's not, you know, it's not quite the hundreds of bikini girls that will turn up at an IFBB show, like, or the hundreds of men's physique. But, you know, we're certainly getting there. And to be honest, with the introduction of men's physique and bikini into natural bodybuilding with the UKFBA, like we've seen some pretty high numbers in those classes as well. So I think it's more in natural bodybuilding, especially, and this is coming from, you know, myself, who I've spectated Two Broke shows, I've spectated PCA shows. What stands out to me is that the depth in natural bodybuilding shows is always incredibly good. Yeah. Whereas you'll always go to a Two Bro show or a PCA show or an assisted show, and there'll always be some standout people, and there'll be maybe like 5 people that are like blow your mind.
Yeah, and
they'll
rest,
be amazing. Yeah. But then the rest, like the depth isn't quite there. There'll be a lot of people that, you know, step up and you're like, I can't look past the fact that you can't control your stomach and your midsection, and you know, your skincare is poor, and you know, it's like I don't know, it's kind of off-putting, if I'm honest, and some people don't understand the conditioning requirements as well. Whereas I truly believe that the depth in natural bodybuilding is slightly more favorable in some instances, not all, but in some, because we've only got, you know, a certain set amount of variables that we can use. Yes. We haven't got this massive, you know, toolbox at our disposal. We've got limited tools. And if we know how to use them correctly, we can often bring an incredible look with minimal interference from, you know, maybe I shouldn't have done that with that, or done that with this. You only got a limited amount of things you can really fuck up. Whereas with an assisted prep, you know, arguably there are more things that potentially people are doing wrong on a consistent basis, or maybe not right. And that will, you know, generally quite, you know, heavily impact the look, the end product. Yeah. So I think the depth is certainly there within natural bodybuilding.
Yeah. I mean, before I do ask the question about the different classes and categories, off the back of that, would you, without trying to get you into too much trouble, would you think, or would you say that would make a natural prep easier than an enhanced prep because you have less variables, I guess, to be concerned about? Or would it make it harder because you have less? You know what I mean?
Harder. I think either which way you look at it, you're going through a process which is pulling your body far away from homeostasis. You know, whether you use assistance to get there or you don't. So my argument for it being moderately harder if you get into true conscious condition is that we haven't got like lipolytics on our side, so we haven't got, you know, fat burning compounds that we can chuck at the equation to get more body fat off. We've got a deficit. If you're not losing body fat, you need to increase the deficit. You know, of course, if you're managing all of your other modalities,
of course,
we haven't got something else that we can sort of chuck at our disposal there. So that's number one. And number two, from a sort of a more deeper physiological perspective, we come out of a prep and, you know, a male is guaranteed to pretty much be hypergonadal. If they reach true stage condition, we have a long recovery phase to even get back to having a normal sex drive. You know, and we haven't got thyroid based hormones to chuck in. So our thyroid function is going to be pretty poor at the end of a prep. We've got a long time to rebuild that function. So we're in probably from a physiological perspective, if you'd say, I'd say we're less healthy in some cases. Yes. If you manage ultimately, if you're trying to bring your best physique possible as an assisted guy or female, at some point you're probably going to have to take some health risks. But and ultimately the end product is not a healthy place to be. But at the same time, let's say, you got into still reasonable shape with a reasonable amount of muscle mass, there's a lot of chances you could probably end up looking healthier than a natural at the end of that process in some cases. So I think, from a health aspect and from the severity of what we have to do to get there, sometimes it is potentially harder and it is potentially more costly. But if you know how to recover from it well, you know how to manage the exit process, then you can make the long term probably, healthier and make your future diets easier, etc. Just the same way that you can do with an assisted client too. So I think this, at the end of the day, bodybuilding is always going to be difficult. There's going to be similarities there for sure. But yeah, you could argue either way, I think, for sure.
And that's completely fair. I just thought I'd get your opinion on it and just see which way you'd pick, because I feel like if you ask an enhanced coach, actually a lot of enhanced coaches do suggest that the natural way is a lot harder purely because of the harshness of a deficit. But then you got those that say, well, when you start implementing more things, you have more things that can go wrong, right? So it's like as you said, you could just basically, if the deficit's there, then it's just a matter of time and pushing hard. And with an enhanced, it's not just a deficit if you're going to use lipolytics and that sort of stuff, but totally different conversation, I'm sure. When it comes to weight classes and stuff, so like you sort of had mentioned, classic is sort of a very well-known weight class, but I don't think a lot of people would understand that that's more privy to like the IFBB type scenario and all these different categories and stuff. So I guess when it comes to the natural competitions, what are the weight classes, both male and female, but also what's the most popular? Like what is it that, attracts the attention?
Yeah. So, I mean, weight class wise, we work on sort of a similar model to most assisted shows in the sense that there'll be, like pretty much a 10 kilo jump between each weight category. So it's typically like a lightweight bodybuilder in natural fetish is under 70 kilos. A middleweight is under 80 kilos. A heavyweight's over 90 kilos. It's pretty much the way that it works. 3 weight categories. We'll have like a novice and a first timer category, which will be people that haven't competed before. And in some federations, it's like you haven't competed before and you have competed before and you haven't placed top 3 at any show. And then in other federations, obviously within the women's categories, there's pretty much always women's figure, women's physique, and women's bodybuilding, whether they're called different things, like fit body or fitness, there's different names, but they're pretty much those 3. And obviously as you go from figure to physique to women's bodybuilding, it's a simple scale of, okay, muscularity is increasing and conditioning requirements are increasing. That's literally it. Some people might say, well, it's about shape in figure. Well, it is, but they're also softer than a physique and a women's bodybuilder. And it's the same, in assisted feds. We'll have bikini in the UKFBA, men's physique in the UKFBA. Men's fitness model, I think, is like a new, or men's fitness in the BNBF, and men's physique actually in the WNBF as well. And I think they have bikini also. So women's physique and bikini are becoming probably, if anything, some of the more popular categories because they're sort of the entry barriers. The barriers for entry are pretty low, or at least lower, because you could be training for like, let's say a year, 2 years, and you probably could, if you trained well and you have good genetic shape, you could probably go in and compete in one of those categories and potentially do quite well. Men's physique actually becoming very well muscled in the natural fed. So you might actually need more time to do well in those. But women's bikini, if you've got the shape and you've got good confidence and pose and poise and you've attacked your glutes with lots of volume, you probably could end up at the muscularity required for some of the natural classes at least. Obviously in the IFBB, it's a completely different ball game. Like the women's bikini girls are no joke. They're massive because the amount of density they have to get their fullness in certain body parts for that class is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the entry sort of, barrier to entry in those two is pretty low. So people come in and do them. Also, I think people feel more comfortable either with the women's bikini posing or the men's physique, the fact that they wear the shorts instead of the posing trunks. People maybe feel more comfortable just going in for that as a first time on stage, generally. Yep. So yeah, those are probably like some of the most popular ones, funnily enough. But men's bodybuilding is still, certainly popular, and we have people that, compete very regularly, either like every other year or, come back even sometimes every year to compete and to try and, get some of these British titles, which are pretty hard to come by. A British title, if you win a British title, you're most likely of a very, very high standards as a whole. Like every time we've taken teams out to any world final, most of our British champions have won the world title too. Yep. So you're usually of a very, very high standard if you win a British title in natural bodybuilding over here.
Yep, that's fair enough. So basically men's physique and still bikini are the sort of the go-tos, it seems, in the natural feds that most people want to watch, I guess. Not so much not so much from a competing standpoint as a bodybuilder, but more that's what brings spectators in, or that's what people will want to watch.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I think, like when obviously people do their first show, they bring a lot of family, friends,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
you always see the people like the men's physique and bikinis. Like when they're on, there's usually a little bit more people there. I think at the end of the day, you got to look at bodybuilding and like women's physique, women's bodybuilding, and even to an extent, women's figure, as much as it's becoming more popular. Like they're pretty extreme sports. You've got to be of a certain level of mindset and dedication to be able to like actually withstand the prep to get to that level of condition. The conditioning parameters for a men's physique, guy and a women's bikini athlete are lower. They're not low by any means, but they're lower. You probably like men's physique. If I had the genetics to do men's physique, I would probably be ready at 12 weeks out from my bodybuilding look. Yeah. So that's 12 less weeks of dieting, which for me would be extremely comfortable, but I don't have anything that sort of stands me out as a men's physique athlete. So I'll stick to bodybuilding, and I embrace, I think the bodybuilders all embrace that final 12 weeks of pulling off the extra bits, which reveal all the condition. I think we all embrace that kind of grind and that push.
Yeah, and that's completely fair. Something that you'd said that your off season is probably going to be a year to 2 years. I guess being in the natural world, we know that obviously it takes a lot more time to put on tissue. Does the appeal, or has the appeal of being enhanced ever been there because you know that you can put on tissue, like obviously much quicker with being assisted?
Yeah, I must admit, especially when I see like a good natural that I know is very consistent and has similar training methodologies to me. And basically like I look at them and I think, okay, obviously androgen response and receptors are completely individualized. So you can never look at like someone and say, oh, I'd grow like them.
Yeah, for sure.
You at least can take a perception as to like how you might respond or might grow and might change. One of my longest standing clients, Jack Richardson, who was a very, very good natural bodybuilder, committed long time to several off seasons and pre-contest phases as a natural. And then when assisted, and his last stage weight was in the low 160s, and he's now pretty lean in the mid 240s.
Right.
In like 2 years.
Yeah. So when that sort of thing happens, does that appeal to you in any way, like shape or form? You
can't deny that it does. You can't deny that. And then he's a client that lives about an hour away from me, so he occasionally comes up to the gym and trains in Rotherham, and I see him and I'm like, God damn it. But I also from coaching him, I also know the worries and the concerns that come with that push and the little scares that you have. And the pip that you get occasionally, all of these little fucking things that I think, I don't like that, I don't like that. And, for him, luckily he's had some good advice. He's consulted with Joe actually, quite a few times, and he's done some smart things. He's made his own mistakes as well, so like I think it's always a case of what if. I think for me, especially with the step that I've taken, more recently with trying to be this big mover in the natural bodybuilding realm, I think I found my place. I've always felt like when I got involved in natural bodybuilding, I felt quite at home. I felt like this was my place, and this was kind of like a little bit of my calling, so to speak, in terms of just, Jack as an assisted athlete, for an example, is like my only client that uses assistants, apart from a few that are on TRT. And he has someone else, like I said, handling that side of things, because I found my niche really within the natural side of coaching, and I know I'm so confident in my ability with that. I know I can really bring great physiques to the stage, and I want to continue just sort of hardening, getting better at that craft. And I feel like I'm also a bit of a role model for my clients, and if definitely. I go down that route, not that they would suddenly think, AJ's not going to be my natural coach anymore. He's going to try and get me to come do this route with
the dark side.
They wouldn't think that. They wouldn't think that. So it doesn't work like that, of course. But I think they might be not as motivated by me in some ways, because everything that I do in the gym, everything that I do in terms of developing my physique, every result that I get on stage is a representation of what you can do naturally. And I think that having that constant representation of what you can do naturally as a role model and a motivational aspect for my clients is an important factor. So if I really want to continue this niche and establish myself as, I'm not going to lie, I want to be remembered as one of the best natural bodybuilding coaches in the world. So to do that, I think, I have to continue to sort of pave this way. But, you mentioned it off air as well, being in the gym in Ultraflex, and, you're never far away from someone that's over 250 pounds in good condition, and that's big boys. That when your stage weight is myself is in the 150s is certainly something quite, you don't feel big, but I'm not, I'd say in all honesty, I'm never really too bothered by that, because obviously I want to look big and I want to feel big. I always got into bodybuilding to do that, but I'm also very intrinsically motivated by what I can push my body to achieve in terms of strength, and I know there's certain things in the gym where I'm not far off people that have got 100-pound of body weight on me. And that excites me. That makes me like, I unrack a weight which I probably shouldn't do for someone of my body weight, and I'm like, right, I'm going to do it. So that's some of the things that definitely motivate me a little bit more. And I even, I spent a year and a half training with Cuba for every single session throughout 2020. For our preps, and also for a small time period there as well, about 3 months. It was me, him, and Jimmy Tonk. And like training with those guys certainly made me think, what if this? And a lot of people thought that Cuba would be someone that would convince me or try and influence me to go that side of things, but he's complete opposite. He's always told me, don't bother. He's been someone that's, when he was younger, he's always pushed the limits. And I think now he's sort of utilizing more of this, not safe because nothing's ever safe, but he's practicing more of the safer use model and learning more about what you can get out of lower dosages. And it's great to see him do that. But at the same time, he's always been sort of like, he's made me aware that if you want to get to the top, you're going to have to do some pretty fucking risky shit. And yeah, I mean, I even measure my own like biofeedback on an off-season push-up as a natural. So I'm measuring blood glucose, blood pressure, resting heart rate, all that jazz. And I see my blood pressure climb even when I'm, completely drug-free.
Yep.
And getting to peak body weights, and I can't imagine it would be very good unless I modulated it incredibly well.
Yep.
With assistance. My hereditary side of things on blood pressure isn't great.
Fair enough.
And that's one of the silent killers in bodybuilding, so
definitely.
Taking all things into consideration, it's not something that I believe I would ever do, but I certainly consider in later life, like a TRT dosage. 100%.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's completely, I guess, different to what it is that we were sort of talking about,
not
right?
Performance enhancing.
Yeah, and in terms of being that temptation to basically try and grow like a weed, and compete more often, I guess. Do you find that to be almost a frustrating factor that you can't compete as often? Well, not that you can't, but it's like you wouldn't compete as often purely because it takes you so much longer to put on tissue to actually put on weight and grow.
Yeah. And it's the recovery process as well. Like, if you get truly contest lean, you are spending a long time getting better from that, to even get back to where you once were. I look at shots of me right now in February, late February, finished contest prep in mid-November, and I haven't, it's sad to say, but I haven't moved forwards. I haven't actually surpassed my look of this time last year yet, which is so upsetting. It's like, I've sacrificed, some lean tissue to get absolutely everything off. And I know I have, because there's, the look at certain body weights isn't as good as when it was coming out of 2020. The main difference being is that I did a prep in 2020, but I didn't get truly contest lean. I was about 10 pounds out, still good enough to do well at some shows, because 10 pounds out is still very lean for me, but it's not like shockingly lean, like everything in kind of lean. So still good enough at that point to do relatively well. But that extra 10 pounds just really, really, really pulls you into a place where you do sacrifice some lean tissue, and you do sacrifice your physiological sort of positioning, and exiting that is a long, long process. So I reckon it will take me, I'm not far off now, but I reckon it would take me until probably another month or so. And then I should be getting into some territory where like I'm really starting to build some actual new muscle. So if I was to start a prep, I'd be prepping off either, if I was lucky, exactly the same amount of muscle, or if in worst case, and I've seen this happen before, less.
Yeah, right.
So slightly, like we're talking pounds, like 1 or 2 pounds, but like 1 or 2 pounds on stage.
I was going to say that makes a big difference when you get contest lean, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's massive. And the last thing you want to do is pull yourself all the way down and just not be improved. So I would obviously love the process of competing. Would I like to compete more often? I don't think that's a huge issue, because I love the off season. Would I like to finish a prep and immediately grow? Yes. I hate the post-show window as a natural bodybuilder. When you get all the way lean and you exit a show, you just spend weeks looking like rubbish, if I'm honest. Because you've not yet got to a position where you can build muscle, because physiologically you're in the dumps. Your food's still relatively low because metabolic function is down. And your training performance is lackluster because you're at stage condition and your joints hurt. And you've also got no sex drive. And, and the weight, because of the hormonal position you're in, I'm not sure whether you like coach assisted athletes or things like that, but you can imagine like when you come off cycle, you go into a cruise, imagine just gaining a lot of weight in that phase. That's kind of how you look as a natural. You don't have that like pop, you don't have that hardness or roundness of the muscle, but you're having to gain body fat because you need to get healthy.
Yes.
And so it just looks, it goes in all the wrong places. So like my midsection is one of the first places to get lean.
Yeah.
But it's the first place where all the adipose tissue goes.
Yeah, fair.
So it just looks dreadful, and you spend a good couple of months looking like a bit watery, a bit bloated, a bit puffy, and then body fat and adipose tissue just like start to partition a little bit better.
Yep. And
you get maybe 5 months away from that post-contest period, and then you start to look pretty good again.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. Like one of the biggest examples of this that I've seen visually is Keefe West on Instagram. You maybe follow him, but he's a insane dude. He's totally drug free, and he pulls like 300 kilos for 9 reps on conventional deads.
Yeah, right. Strong.
And he's like my age.
Yeah.
So he came down to Rotherham must have been 2 months after he competed in 2020, and he was like 228 pounds. And I looked at him and I was like, hey, you look good. You look like, how you should look for this period of time. And then, but he kind of looked like sort of how I looked in the last couple of months, just a bit watery, a bit bloated, a bit puffy.
Yep.
And then he spent the whole off season doing how I feel off season should be ran if you're a younger athlete, which is basically push, hold as long as you can.
Yep.
So avoid a deficit. You're not growing. If you've done a contest prep and you've got all the way lean as well, and you want to really, really max out recovery, and your body comp is good, and the rest of your stuff's going on is all right, just push, hold.
Yep.
And he push, hold all the way to like 244. And he looks, in my opinion, to my own eye, better at 244 than he did at 228 post show, and he's completely drug free. Yeah. Is that 20 pounds of muscle? No, it's not.
No, of course.
Is it 15 pounds of muscle? No, it's not. But it's like the distribution of that body fat looks completely different. Yeah. His physiological place completely different, and as a result, just everything looks harder. Yeah. He's owned that now heavier body weight, but he's in a much better position underneath, the cogs of the internal side of things. The physique is representative of a much better place for him. So, I think when a lot of people look at assisted guys, well, this is a good message to natural athletes, is like, don't look at the assisted guy that comes out of a contest and then, 3 or 4 months later is doing a harsh mini cut. You can't do that. You can't do that as a natural.
Yeah.
If you do that, you literally just going to spin your wheels your whole off season, because you're not ever going to fully recover from your prep. Really, if you keep following this, like quick tidy up, go again, quick tidy up, like we can't afford to just keep doing that and ever expect to be in a physiological position where you are looking your best, that the background and the inner workings of a physique is probably like one of the most overlooked things within naturals. And that's why I think there needs to be more of a movement towards naturals getting like, slightly more frequent blood work done. Especially if you don't feel like you're good. And that sounds so simple, but like a lot of naturals don't feel good, and they don't ever really get it tested or checked, because they think that blood work is only for assisted guys and girls.
Yeah, and it's completely incorrect. I guess with that, would you then think, using the example of the mini cut for the assisted athlete versus potentially not being able to do that, with body fat levels in the off season, then for naturals, would we see, or would you think that we'd see a higher body fat level, like sort of permitted, I guess, because, when we talk about body fat levels in enhanced, they say nothing really more than 15, like a 20% type body fat max. Would that be the same for a natural athlete, or could we see those body fats go a little bit higher because we can't move to a mini cut and move into, taking time away from growing?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I'm not against the idea of mini cuts. And I think that within some athletes' longer off seasons trajectory, like it can make sense. Yep. Absolutely. But within maybe like, let's say an athlete's finished the year competition season late in 1 year, and then they're only taking a 1 year gap. I mean, the next diet for me would be either at least 6 months, 7 months into off-season phase, at least, or it would be, maybe a pre-prep diet before the actual prep itself to check that we're in a place where the body's actually reactive. We're getting the response rates that we want into a deficit, because a lot of the time we don't get those response rates straight away when we try and flick the switch and go into a diet with someone that isn't fully recovered. Now, in terms of body fat levels, I think this is very similar to sort of the way that you maybe will look at an assisted athlete. Is just, it really does depend on training age, in my opinion. Yep. Obviously, a younger athlete, I do genuinely believe, can benefit from spending time at higher body fat set points where, let's face it, their propensity to actually put on new muscle tissue is going to be greater. Yes, sometimes body fat people can take that the wrong way, and they can bulk up to, 20 plus beyond body fat percentage and just be a complete mess. But I think your body has most people has a pretty smart way of telling you when you're at the upper end. You'll start to get very, very poor appetite signaling. You'll start to just look visually softer, especially month to month, but almost week to week, because we know you'll get to a certain point where you literally do favor more adipose tissue accrual as a result of where you're at body fat wise. So I have seen some clients where, especially, funnily enough, the guys that start almost like that skinny fat kind of look, the skinny fat dudes that are like really, really light and under muscled. The amount of weight that they've gained or that I've put on clients like that makes no sense as to how much. Like, I wouldn't have said they could gain that much weight. But they've been gaining it, and I've just been like, nothing's no, there's no problem. Like, we're getting perfect appetite signaling. We're probably by that point in a push measuring things like blood glucose. We're probably keeping an eye on other metrics like resting heart rate, blood pressure, all that jazz, because we've extended a push longer than I imagined it would have gone. So I'm just starting to try and get more data points.
Yes, of course.
To make sure I'm not pulling them into a pretty poor position. And if we're getting all of those things come back green lights, then I'm just going to keep going, especially with someone that's young, so it could be like 45, 50, 60 pounds up sometimes, and be like, okay, when's this going to end? And then you'll have a flick point for sure. And I've had that with some clients, even one really recently where I think his gaining phase from the time that we started was like 70 weeks, 75 week push, and just consistently being in either a very small surplus, some maintenance blocks, and then some harder pushing phases. And he just completely transformed his look, laid down probably what I would describe as like the foundations of his physique. Because he was only a young dude. And then he literally had 2 weeks of just checking in saying, no, I just can't eat. Just came out of nowhere, came out of nowhere, just like can't eat. Sort of other, like allostatic load was still relatively low, like there wasn't much that was going on that really gave us red lights, but just couldn't eat. So we had to pull the plug, like as a coach and as an athlete, if you understand enough of the parameters that are going to control your body, you should know when that point comes. And I think that, the people that are the ones that usually don't make massive physique changes are the ones that try to operate within this optimal window of expectation, and they almost put so much pressure on themselves in an off season to stay within a specific range. I've talked to a lot of competitors about, like, especially like experienced competitors. Like, I asked them, when do you think your most productive off season was and why? And usually it's the off seasons where they just listened to their body. They ate when they felt hungry and they were in a surplus when their body was giving them that signaling. They pushed to a little bit of an uncomfortable spot and they spent some time there. And that's really it. It's not complicated. I think the off seasons where you don't get uncomfortable, the off seasons where you try and keep it too strict, are probably the off seasons where you maybe are limiting potential growth to an extent. So yeah, that's my opinion, at least from the people that I've worked with thus far.
Yeah, I mean that's a very, very valid opinion. I think it's obviously it's very, very interesting when it comes to obviously the differences when it comes to enhanced and natural. So it's good. I think I've had a lot of enhanced guests on, so it's always interesting to have someone of your stature when it comes to naturals and coaching naturals and having your record as well. So I'm sure myself and the listeners appreciate your views on it, because it's definitely something that's probably not pushed enough, right? I think enhanced bodybuilding, enhanced fit and physique placements, I guess that's what's really popularized, right? That's what's shown, because you see all these guys that are crazy. They look crazy. They're mass monsters and all this sort of stuff. But the naturals just don't get enough, I guess, media and get enough applause.
I agree massively, 100%.
I don't want to keep you too long, because I think you only had the hour, so we're coming up on time. But what I'd want to finish with firstly is a question that I tend to ask my guests that seems to stump most people, and I feel like it's a very simple question. Just 3 Instagram accounts that you follow that better your day-to-day life, whether they're educational, whether they're funny, motivating, whatever it is. Who did you want to shout out?
Sure. Trained by JP is the first one comes to my top of my head. I love following Jordan. Just watch whatever he's done in the gym, and I'm usually ready to go and train straight away.
I think we all share that.
A rest day, so yeah, love him. Matt Jansen's a guy that I love to follow. Partially because I just get very motivated by the people that he works with, the caliber of athletes. And I think, over more recent years, especially with the stuff that gets thrown at him from the media, sometimes I just really like how he holds himself. I think he's very professional. I think he speaks very well and very clear, and really, really rate his page and his Q&As. Just nice, simplistic way of putting things a lot of the time. But yeah, very motivating. And then finally, there's so many, so it's hard to not miss people, but I think Nick Gloff is an account that everyone should follow. If you don't understand what he writes, sometimes that just shows that there's so many levels to this game, and I'm lucky enough to have been friends with him for about 3 years now, so I've watched his rise. I was a follower of his when he was training in his university gym, and everyone in the university gym would be looking at him with 6-7 plates on a squat, and he'd be using all the plates in the gym. So he's been going at it for a long time. And now, I was, we had a little bit of a group chat with him and then some friends of ours, and we always used to tell him, there'll be a time where you'll just skyrocket, because his knowledge was always unbelievably good, just crazy good. And his application of it as well in the gym with the way that he can train is just unbelievable. And now kind of is his rise. He's on some pretty cool trajectory, and I think he's going to be probably one of the best coaches in the world at some point, and probably a superb athlete to go alongside that. So
agreed. He's a
great one to follow.
He's a very, very intelligent person, that is for sure. And for the listeners, where can they find you? You have a few different things going on. Didn't get a chance to sort of talk about your other endeavors, but I guess where can the listeners find you?
So my main page, I guess, for following me is my Instagram at @AJMorris_. And I post frequently on YouTube as well. So my channel is AJ Morris, and my channel goes all the way back to pretty much when I started, getting involved in this industry. So plenty of old videos on there if you want to check them out. And then my sort of other endeavors. So Natural Bodybuilding Worldwide isn't launched yet, but that should be launched in June. So that's going to be sort of a membership site targeted towards the natural bodybuilding community. But of course, anyone can join it. It's not, limited. You don't have to prove that you're drug free to join. Someone asked me that on a Q&A the other day. I was like, no, there's not going to be a polygraph to enter.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's great. I'm going to do a urine test.
So yeah, that's going to be sort of my, one of my babies for sure, in terms of just trying to elevate the sport and give back to it as well with athletes coming on board. And then finally, the other one in the corner is Be Epic, and that's just my clothing brand. should be coming out with some pretty cool things over the summer period with that. So yeah, excited for the growth of that one, and you can pretty much find that, just go on my page, you'll find the tags, and pretty easy to find those three. But yeah, thanks very much for having me on, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for jumping on, and I'm sure the listeners definitely got a kick out of it as much as I did. Hopefully we can get you on again soon, have part 2.
Absolutely. Yeah,
thanks.
for sure. Thank you, mate.
Thank you to the listeners as always for tuning in. We'll hear from you soon.